We are on. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody.
Okay, every single time I keep telling you something. Welcome back. This is our very first podcast.
Well, we're going to act like we've been doing it for a long time.
In his mind, he's been doing it forever because we've been talking about this for probably 2 years. Like, hey, we should do a podcast, but we're too broke right now to order more some mics. If you could see us right now, you'd understand the circumstance. We're sitting in the village under our mosquito net with some purple curtains and some blue walls and in our bed. So this is the very first circumstance that we've had to record. We just got mics from Canada, and here
Yep.
we go.
Yep. I don't know what to say.
You know what to say?
It's not very glamorous.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
that's all right. I think we should start off by talking about why are we in this blue room? What are we doing here with purple curtains? What's the circumstances that we are putting ourselves in?
Well, actually, the purple curtains are an upgrade. We can start with that.
They were orange and white and a little bit frumpy and moldy, but now we've upgraded to some mic adjustment. Sorry about that. We've upgraded to some new purple colors. So I think so. Let's start from the beginning. What do you say?
So the question is, what are we considering the beginning? Are we going like all the way back to like our long drive when we used to live in Kelowna, which is in Canada, by the way, everybody, and we decided to go look at houses that nobody could afford?
Actually,
Remember
no,
that night?
no. Let's go like way, way back.
Okay, we're
Like-
getting into the details that nobody's ever heard about, or maybe even really cared about. Let's be
I
honest.
don't know. Let's just go way back because then we don't have to answer this question again. Maybe I don't know.
Okay,
Okay, so John and I got married 2011. 2000.
yeah, okay, yeah, you're right.
2011.
You're right.
All right. And then 2012, Jonathan brought me to Fiji to do like a Fijian wedding ceremony and kind of just introduced me to the village.
That was our honeymoon. Remember Hilton?
Let's not call that our honeymoon.
Okay, why are you afraid to call that our honeymoon?
All right, we'll just continue with the story because it was not great.
Okay.
Anyway,
We'll get back to that one day if you guys
Let's
are
just
actually
not, yeah.
interested.
Ask us if you want to know, but otherwise it was not great. So we came to Fiji and I had zero expectations other than I had to dress modestly. That was kind of all I was told.
Yeah, we kind of might have freaked you out with the protocol stuff.
Yeah.
And the what to do's and what not
Well,
to do's.
like, okay, so number one, if you ever marry a girl from overseas and bring her, it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter.
It's true.
Doesn't matter where you're from. If you're bringing her back home to the fam jam and you're like, hey, I'm going to introduce
Okay, we're talking about like
you-
any guy taking any girl
Any
back
guy
home anywhere
ever.
in the world,
Anywhere in the world.
or only to Fiji.
No, anywhere in the
Okay,
world.
okay.
Give her the rundown, please. Give her the basics. Give her just a smidgen.
I
Of
felt like me and Dad
information.
gave you.
You gave me nothing.
Okay.
We come into the village, we
Here you go,
arrive,
guys.
we get out of the
For all you-
back of a carrier that
For
was
all you Fijian boys, this is for you. All you Fijian
Yeah.
boys looking for a white girl, you want to bring her home. This is what you have to do. Okay.
well, you need
Take
to
it
just
from
give
us.
her some info.
Okay.
So I get out of the back of the carrier and I'm just standing there and they just say, just wait, see what happens to you and follow your father-in-law and do as he does.
Well-
So I'm standing there and they wrap me in tapa, which I'm going to be honest. I was just standing there going like, oh, okay, they're wrapping me in this thick,
Bark.
bark with some yarn string kind of weird material.
So for those of you who don't know, tapa is the bark of a tree that's pounded out. It's you have to strip it off a tree, special tree, then it's pounded out and stuck together with starch, or at least it used to be back in the day. Maybe it's changed now, and then it's dyed with all sorts of different kinds of browns and blacks and stuff like that. So it's a thing that's really special to Fijian culture and maybe even other Pacific cultures. We'll have to look into that. But this is
Yeah.
what Stephanie gets to the village. We bring out this bark, and my auntie, my dad's elder sister, starts wrapping her.
And the yarn string I'm referring to is just raffia. So
Oh yeah, raffia.
they wrap me in it. and then they hand me a whale's tooth. Like, okay,
Hey.
thank you for the whale's tooth.
Respect the whale's tooth,
Yes,
man.
but here's the thing. It's all good. It's lovely.
It is
It's
lovely.
beautiful tradition if you know what's going on.
Okay.
When you don't, and someone just says, here's the whale's tooth, you're going, oh, okay, thank you, honey. And so they just say, just follow dad into the village. Your father-in-law, just do what he does. So we walk into the village, and I'm like kind of freaking out because culture shock and I don't know what's going on, and they're just like, watch your father-in-law, do as he does. So we're walking up to the veranda, which is like an outside patio, and where I'm from in Canada,
You take off your
in the
shoes.
yeah, but in Canada that's still considered the outside of the house. On the outside of the house, you keep your shoes on. And I'm wearing flip-flops, and I'm watching my father-in-law's face and his back, not his feet. So he like slyly slides them off quickly on like the ramp up to the veranda, and I don't see him. And like right away, I just get like, Stephanie, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm just like, uh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have a whale's tooth in my hand, and I'm in this puffy bark, and I don't know. I have my shoes on. What are you referring to? What am I doing? And they're like, your shoes, your shoes. So it just felt like a full mental breakdown on me, and I was not aware. And honestly, we were here for a month, and that's how the entire month felt. Was just like,
It was a rough first
I
trip.
am
I'll give you that.
unaware, and it felt like mental breakdowns on Stephanie constantly because, you know, I just feel like there was a lot of pressure to be this perfect village wife that I was not, and also not prepared to be, and also just totally overwhelmed by all the newness. And I think culturally, everything from Canada versus Fiji is opposite. And it's a beautiful thing, but I'm going to be honest, it was overwhelming, and I was very underprepared.
But do you think that there's actually anything that could have prepared you for, like, if we would, because there was a level of orientation that was given, but obviously with the wedding ceremony and everything, like, that takes everything to a whole
No,
nother
I
level.
would say, bless your guys' heart. You guys do orientation with all your friends and people that you bring. I got zero. I got told, cover your shoulders.
So that's on me then. Yeah,
Oh, totally.
that's on me.
Totally, you screwed up.
Bless your guys's means me, myself, and I, Jonathan. Like,
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah, all of you.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, wow. And honestly, like the first introduction to the village was rough, and it's gotten a lot easier over the years, only because, to be honest, there's been some modernization. Can't say it. Yeah, just like
It's like realtor.
yeah. There's
So-
some just so you are aware. There's some words I don't say properly, and you can make fun of me. Enjoy yourself. My husband does. Put it in the
It's a realtor,
comments,
Stephanie, not a realtor.
and I will say as I say. And enjoy
Realtor
myself.
sounds like some sort of dinosaur.
Well, they sell homes. I'll say seller of houses. Anyway, in the village when we first got here, there was kerosene lanterns and rats running in the roof and all the newness.
Okay, let's be honest. There's still rats.
Oh, there's
running in
still
the roof.
rats in the roof. It's just not like a pack of them, and they're like there's one, and I have
Yeah, I
to
think-
poison it.
Yeah,
And it feels like one against me is equal.
but honestly, this guy must be the rat king because, like, he's been poisoned several times. like,
dude.
he's consumed a couple pounds of poison at this point,
Yeah.
or he's just stashing it away
No,
for
it's a
his
different rat,
enemies.
dude. It's a different one. Let's be real.
We're talking about the rat that runs above our roof. You might actually hear him during this podcast. We don't know.
Yeah. It's a little extra, but
So
anyway,
back to how we
so
didn't
let's
prepare you.
just like get over the newness, the freaked outness of me. So every 2 years for the next, like, I don't know, I don't know, would we come back to Fiji like 3 times, I think, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
I kind of got semi used to being here. I think I just like adjusted, had an idea. Like the second time we came was so much easier than the first time.
Yeah.
And then the third time we came, I had our oldest son, Aliki, And that was actually the best
That was
visit we
that was the
had.
best visit that you had. Yeah.
Because, well, I think also like the focus was no longer about me. Everybody was like,
Yeah.
oh, so excited about my kid. And everybody was like way more easygoing with me and like, oh, well, guess what? You don't have to take this ferry. You could fly. And the rest of our family will take the ferry. I will say I got spoiled like when we had a leaky, and I appreciated it because I was just like, oh good, I have it a little easier than everybody else, and like that's fine with me because I was like, I know when we get there it's gonna be a little bit harder and I just need to suck it up. So anyway, that's kind of like my intro to Fiji, and our Fiji is very different than everybody else's
Mm.
Fiji. So I constantly say this to people.
Yeah. So what we do mix around with, lots of people from different parts of Fiji, even different parts of our island. So for those of you who don't know, Fiji is actually made up of like 340-ish islands, I think.
But there's only two major islands.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few major islands. There's 140 of them that I think roughly that are inhabited. And there's probably a dozen of them.
Okay, sorry. These are the two largest
These are the two
islands.
largest islands. So we're on the northernmost one. It's called Vanuatu. And so, yeah, when we say everybody's Fiji is different, is like you can live in Nandi. Nandi is where you'll fly into if you're coming from overseas. It's it's the main international airport where I'd say 99% of the tourism comes through there. And so if
Yeah.
you go to Nandi, you will experience
Hotels.
and like beaches that are just lined
Kind of
with
like
hotels.
Western restaurants.
Yeah, and it's definitely got its place. Like
Yeah.
me and Stephanie, when we lived in Canada, we used to go down to Mexico on all-inclusive vacations, and that was awesome because all we wanted to do was just to check out, get away from our phones, get away from people that we knew, not because we hated people, but just for break. So Nandi has its place. Then you got Suva, which is like more of a local vibe, I guess, but more city. So you got a people. I I think you got a bunch of people who belong in the village, but ended up in the city, and they kind of they there's a certain vibe in Suva, and it's confusing to me because
Well, I think there's like city life brings like modern conveniences. It brings like busyness, and I think it's just like a whole, and you've also got a lot of like interesting like expats there because you've got like the government
yeah,
expats
right,
that come into the
all the
country.
embassies and everything.
Yeah, and
No,
they're
like it's all good. It's just like I've just never got the vibe in Suva, and I bet that's where like a lot of people who know us are probably in Suva, or
but you're also not a city person, so
yeah,
I think that also contributes. You're just like, oh, it's so busy here. It's not even the vibe of things. It's so busy, and you're just like this little
yeah.
like country bumpkin.
So
That's
you
what
got
you
Nandi
love.
tourist hub, which is awesome. You got Suva, like city hub, which is great. Awesome food.
And then you have things
Good
like on our island, which is like Savu Savu, which is like a small touristic
coastal.
town that is quaint, and you've got a mix of kind of all the things, but it's definitely like you can live like this holiday lifestyle if you have the money for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cute. And you also have like these little import stores where you can kind of get anything. I think almost
Anything,
anything. Yeah, not all.
anything
All
for
right,
sure.
let's say like 50% of the things that you could want.
Yeah,
Just say like you could get a can of olives or tin of olives, and you'd be like, "Oh, this is pretty rare."
yeah, that is pretty crazy actually. So there's Fiji is actually such a small country. We're less than 1 million people, but there's so many different parts to Fiji, and people. I think from what we've, at least with having a presence on social media and talking to people, is that people seem to think that like your Fiji is the same as their
Yeah,
Fiji,
it's so different from.
but like our version of Fiji is very different than. I mean, look at us. We're podcasting in a bedroom, with mice in our ceiling
Yeah, so
in the middle of the village.
I think like realistically, when we came, Jonathan never even took me to Savu Savu.
Yeah.
Like I just thought Fiji was the village, and I'd been to Nandi, but like we only spent ever like 3-4 days there. It was never like a lot of time.
Yeah, it's kind of like a point to transit through almost.
Yeah, that's how I felt, and I always just kind of felt like, it was like quickly rush. I didn't really know anything about the town other than like downtown where people are like, come see my shop, come see my shop. And I, I was like, oh, okay, so you either
Oh
have like
dear.
this, like, hey, come buy my stuff because you're white and I'm going to take advantage of you as a tourist, or you have the village where you're like so immersed in culture, and it's not like the Indo-Fijian culture, in the mix of that. It's just village life and what that encompasses. And so that's kind of what I viewed Fiji as. And I remember the first time we came to Fiji, I told John, like, yeah, I could never live here, like it's too hard. And
Little did you know, I find that whenever you say something, God's like listening to you. He's like, nah, very funny.
good luck
Watch
with
me.
that.
Watch this.
Yeah.
And then 10
No,
years later,
yeah, so it did take a while. Like, obviously, I had to get used to the idea of like what life would look like here. And guys, I love business. I love it. It's just like something I thrive
okay,
over.
don't get distracted.
No. So I'm just telling you. So, okay, so 10 years later, John and I are in Canada. We've grown our business there to where we're not really doing much. We have a manager running it. We pop in once in a while,
And
do some emails.
we'll get into more details on like what we do back in Canada
Yeah, later.
in a bit. Yeah.
And John and I were kind of getting bored with our lives. Like, we were like looking at houses, like John had said, that were way too expensive, like $500,000 houses, which honestly were like tear down houses that like squatters had been in, and nobody would want to own them. That's how it felt. Like, they'd been
But
smoked in, and they were $500,000, and we're going like,
yeah, right.
is this
Yeah.
really what like we're gonna spend $500,000 in? We lived, pardon me, in one of the most expensive cities other than in our like Western Canada area.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
were just going like, so do we just like buy a house and this is what our lives circulate around? And I think we just started seeing like we started to have kids, and we started seeing all our friends buying homes.
Yeah, and like we didn't want to. One thing that we did a lot of while we were in Canada was serve with our church because
Yeah.
we really felt that that was important. And I guess just the way that our lives played out, Jonathan was the one who did a lot of like the upfront like stuff that people would notice, serving our church. I was on the elders board and I led a Bible study and a few other things, and that was awesome. And then and Steph supported me from the background, I guess you could say, because we felt like we wanted to be really good parents. And so Stephanie felt like it would, I think he felt like it would empower me, like you were doing the obedient thing in your mind to
I
like let
felt
me
like
serve in the church.
I had a very front-facing role in our business. I dealt with our staff. I dealt with
Right.
our customers. John dealt with all the background stuff. And then in church, I just felt like John should take a leadership role there. Like, I think in the Bible it talks about husbands being the leader of your household and women being submissive to their husbands. And I am not a submissive woman, but I just thought like, you know what? If in any area of life that John should take leadership, it's here. It's in church. It's in like leading our family and like being godly. And so I just kind of like let him take just like a larger role, a front facing role in that. And I just wanted to be the supporting background. So anyway, you can maybe hear our kids coming in the background. We're going to take a break and put them to bed. Hello. Can you guys say hello? You get your mouth full of something.
He's got a mouthful of cake. All right.
Anyway.
We will be right back. All right. We're back.
Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, with what I was saying, I was talking about Jonathan taking a leadership role in church. I felt like that was important for the reasons I said prior. And then also within leadership, like I was developing as a leader in person with people in our business. And I really saw Jonathan grow as a leader.
Aw.
I did.
You're so cute. You're like, I'm going to take a background role because he needs more leadership experience. You're so kind. I don't like the way this is turning out. I just really felt like Jonathan needed to develop as a leader and really step up as a man.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not fair. I just was like, this is my wifely duty to support you in this. And I am an overbearing person at times. And I just felt like, yes,
You're also very honest. I
just
appreciate that. Thank you.
liked seeing you being pushed out of your comfort zone. And I wanted in any area of our lives for you to be a leader. It was in our church. I wanted you to be respected. I wanted you to be known, and I didn't want to take the spotlight away from you in any
So
way.
you think it's hot? You think it's hot to have a man who's you think it's hot to be married to a man who's respected?
Sure. Yeah, I do. And I
Okay.
like confidence. And
All right.
there you have it, people.
Okay.
So anyway.
Okay. So
Beyond that, from what we like to do, we were involved in our church. We love to go camping.
Yeah. Exactly.
We like to disconnect.
We were really involved with our church, like I said. And the other thing that we really like to do was go camping. And mainly we went camping because Jonathan, me, like to go fishing. And so...
Okay, you always say that. Jonathan, like, okay, when we were in Canada...
Well, that's how it started, I guess.
He was like, you don't even like camping. Guess what, people? I went camping 3 weeks after we had our first son.
I'm just talking about, I guess, the origins of, like, our obsessions with, like... And the reasons that we went out in the beginning was because Jonathan felt obsessed to go and find these little lakes that weren't very nice. Sure. There was no outhouses.
All right, let's go with that. And I liked reading a good book. And I said, hey, have fun fishing for 8 hours. And I will read my novel and have a nice life.
And so, yeah, I love fishing. And so that's one of the reasons we went camping, but also because we both really like to disconnect, and it was really important for us. Like we said before, like the reasons we go to Mexico to get out of the service and away from our phones and all that kind of stuff, the stuff that comes with owning a business. And so way backtracking now to when we were looking at houses, we saw how it went for a lot of our friends and just for a lot of the people that we knew in general. When you buy a house overseas,
and
you
also,
kind of...
There's nothing bad about owning a house.
Absolutely not.
And there's nothing bad about that being like your aspiration in life.
No, I just think
John and I see life a little differently than the average person.
Yeah, and so we didn't want to just get wrapped up in a house and require having renters downstairs to make the mortgage, because we weren't really in a place where we could just own a house in a really expensive city, which is a city that we would have wanted to live in, and make it be something that would be a life that we would enjoy, I suppose.
Yeah, and like, just so you guys have perspective, I would say John and I were like lower middle class.
Yeah.
Family, like not upper middle class.
I had a lot of friends who thought that I had a lot more money than I had.
Yeah, but that's because we like rented, and John and I were like grocery budget, and then we'd be like, let's upgrade our 4Runner to go camping and like have cool things. And
we had a cool 4x4 vehicle.
Have like cool experiences instead of like going to a fancy restaurant and ordering a bottle of wine. We were like, well, that's a moment.
Yeah.
But like, let's go for a weekend or a week.
And I guess that's where this is all going, is that instead of being obsessed, or not being obsessed, but being really concerned about, getting a house and settling down and having a family and being comfortable, we've always just enjoyed making the most of life from the experiential side of things. And that meant we go camping, and we would do really, really random things, that like Stephanie going camping 3 weeks after she gave birth to a leaky. Those are things that a lot of people wouldn't do, but they're just legendary stories for us now. Yeah. And maybe for nobody else. And you guys will probably hear more of them as we go on this podcast, but that, I guess, goes way back to kind of the reasons why we ended up in Fiji.
Yeah, like I think camping also helped ease the transition into living in the village in Fiji. I feel like we camp.
Yeah, we're for sure just
every
permanently
day.
Camping right now.
That's like, I think like I loved camping.
Just wait. Shh.
What?
Can you guys hear the crickets? We're basically camping right now. That's right. If I open this curtain, you are outside.
Yeah, there's no screens on our windows.
No, whatever is outside is now inside.
And like the walls don't have like framing so you can like feel the wind through the walls. Like yeah.
Okay, we are way getting sidetracked here. Hey guys,
Okay.
welcome to the first Waka Family
It doesn't
podcast.
it doesn't matter. Anyway,
But what
so we
happened with the air coming through the walls is when you have a hurricane, what happens is the rain, it just comes through your house,
yeah.
and the water just comes through the walls. Ask some of my camera equipment what happened when it was leaning
Ah
against the wall in the last
yeah.
hurricane.
Brutal.
Anyways,
Lessons learned.
yeah.
So I think we like John and I were just kind of like, I don't know, twiddling our thumbs in Canada, going like, what's the next move for us? Like, do we expand the business that we have in Canada? How passionate are we about this? What are we doing? John was starting like to do some farming stuff in Fiji. He had been for the last like 3 years, going back to Fiji for a month every year.
Yeah.
And we were definitely having some difficulties trying to get things in the ground. Like we'd send money to get like 1,000 plants in the ground.
Whatever plant that would
Whatever,
be. Yeah.
whatever it was.
At that time.
And then John would come down and be like, inspect it and be like, okay, so like how many plants did we get in? What does it look like? And they're like, oh, and then they count. And John would be like, oh, you only got 300 in, but I paid you for 1,000. And they're like, yeah, but it was lots. And then, well, who did you call? You called like that guy.
Here's South Pacific math for you. 1,000 is equal to lots.
Yeah.
Lots is equal to whatever the discretion of the person who says lots.
Yeah. Yeah, I will. Yeah, but then, yeah, I know. So you called someone.
Yeah, well, what happened was, I called a gentleman by the name of Krishnamurti, and he
Great
was,
guy.
great guy, and he was involved with the Tapus brothers, basically, I think, from the outset of that business, and he has since retired and now lives overseas, but I looked up to him as a kid growing up and as a teenager.
Well, and also
Knowing,
like one of the most like influential business people you knew.
well, that's what I'm
in
getting at.
Fiji.
Yeah, like I looked up to him because he was just like the most influential business guy that I knew, who was also a Christian. And as you guys will learn, that's like really important to me and Steph. Like having people that we respect who share the same values and morals as we do, I think is really, really important. And so I inquired him. I think I sent him an email or gave him a call or a Facebook Messenger, and I was like, hey man, like I'm looking to start farming and start doing things in Fiji and like take it seriously and like send money there, and like I'm visiting there a couple times a year, and basically on a long and well thought out email to this very influential businessman, he replied with like, let me know when you're really serious about doing business in Fiji, which is when you move down. And once you move, then send me an email and I'll give you some advice.
So
That's pretty much what he said.
So harsh and yet great advice.
Yeah.
Like
it was
so brutal to hear. We're like, what? What is he like from afar? We're like, is he serious? Like, is this really all he's giving us?
yeah.
And now that I'm here, I'm like, now that's all I'm gonna say to other people.
Yeah. And it's something that we have said to other people,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like there's so many I guess there's also like it feels like there's so many Fijian guys with white wives that we know.
There's
I think
a
just
lot.
because of our friend groups and stuff like that. Those guys like overseas, like where we came from, and they're all like all the guys like want to do something back home. And it's like, now that we've kind of taken that step and come to Fiji, it's like, yo, don't try and do anything in Fiji without being in Fiji. Like you can do it and you can send money. It's kind of like the Fiji Sugar Corporation, the FSC in Fiji. And it's like it's better. The Fiji Sugar Corporation is better than just giving free money out. It might not be profitable, but it's better than just sending money for no reason. So in the same way, like send these guys or girls, whoever you are, sending money back to Fiji in pursuits of business, it probably isn't getting utilized in the way that you might want or the way that you know how or way you could do it best. But it's better than just sending money when people ask for money, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then for the ladies, I always tell them, these are Western white ladies. Well, you don't have to be white. You can be any color, but not from this country. And I always tell them, come visit a few times before you jump into the deep end. Don't just move, because I've met a few of those.
Yeah, and I think we we're in a bit of a unique situation because even a few of the couples that we know, the ladies or the guys or whoever it is, are from New Zealand or Australia. And
Yeah.
to me, it's Steph, I think, right? If I can speak on your behalf, I think like New Zealand and Australia feel like just like you can throw a rock at them. And
Yeah.
until recently now that there's actually a direct flight, thanks to Fiji Airways, like right to Canada, like it was a long ways away.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh.
and we're talking about like, up until a little while ago, like a couple thousand and a half. We're talking about like 4 grand Fijian per ticket to get to Canada, at least, if not 5 grand. And so it just felt like a big stretch. Like when you come to Fiji, you're coming to Fiji and you're
Yeah.
coming for a hot minute. Like you're going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, so John and I were like talking about business and talking about the Fiji farm that we were starting and all this stuff. And I kind of said to him, look, like, I think either we move there or we shut it down. And I think, like, ultimately, I had to say that to John because he is such a good husband. He would never say to me, like, hey, what do you think about moving to Fiji? Because I think, like, he's known that, like, my experiences visiting here has been pretty rough, to be honest. And, like, as the years have gone, it's gotten easier, but it's never been easy. It's never been comfortable. It's never been, like, where I fit in. It's never been something that, like, we've seen as, like, an ideal space for us, right?
yeah, I think it's probably been easier for me, obviously, than it has been for you.
Yeah.
But that's not saying much.
So I think
Especially
ultimately it
after
had to
weeks like
kind
the
of be
week we've
like
had right
my
now.
suggestion. I think ultimately I had to kind of say to him, like, look, I'm willing to move if you're on board, or we shut it down because we can't do this from afar. We've had all these difficulties over the last 3 years. We've heard from the most influential, smartest, successful businessman we know in Fiji that we have to move or he doesn't want to even talk to us. So, like, what are we doing? We're not doing much in Canada, so, like, why not move?
So when Stephanie says that we're not doing much in Canada, we do have actually like a really exciting business that we still own and operate
Yeah.
back in Kelowna, British Columbia. The business name is actually Organic and Clean. I don't actually think we've really ever talked about it
No,
with
and
anybody because like it doesn't really matter to what we're doing in Fiji. But
no.
it's like it's cool. Actually, this is an awesome opportunity to talk about it because of Organic and Clean and the awesome manager that we have in Canada and
Amazing
the
manager.
amazing
Yeah.
manager that we have in Canada and the staff. Um, it allows us to be here. Yeah, we put in a lot of work and there's systems and processes in place that allow us to have a business that basically runs itself from afar. And there's still things that we really want to do with that business going into the future. Um, it's just we haven't talked about it a lot because it doesn't really seem like it would make sense for a lot of things that we do in Fiji. But that business does allow us to be here and bring in even whatever income that we can
Yeah, and I
while we're here.
love that business. Like, when I say, like, we weren't doing anything in Canada, like, I love that business. Like, John and I
Well, it's our
grew
baby.
it together.
Yeah.
And, like, I started it the year after we got married. Like, I've been in it to win it for a long time here.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I mean, like, we're not doing anything. Like, it was finally running itself. John and I were doing stuff here and there, but, like, you could see that we were getting a little antsy. We needed to do something. If it was another business in Canada or if it was something in Fiji, it just needed to be something new because John and I also, like, thrive off of struggle and invention, creativity.
Yeah, we've learned that recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we've learned, what I'm referring to is that like we don't struggle with new ideas. So what we've decided on for the next season of our life, which happens to be around New Year, so we'll call it 2023, is focusing on ourselves, less ideas and more just refining ourselves to make us better at running the ideas that I guess we already have.
Yeah. So John and I agreed in the long run that we were going to move to Fiji. We took an entire year to like make sure the business in Canada was like
Can I take a step back?
really self-sufficient.
So I think the reason that this whole Fiji thing was even at play was after one trip that we took. I think it was probably your third trip here, and that was just like a kind of like a 4-week vacation or whatever.
Yeah.
I was sitting out on the veranda, and at the time all the talk was about sandalwood, and so we did some research. We figured out like how much sandalwood sells for, the oil. I did hours and hours and hours of research, and I looked at the amount of land that our Matangali or our clan has here, and potentially how much land that me and Dad could lease. And we're like, yo, like this would be life-changing money, like as people would say, like fu money, if you got to the point where you could harvest sandalwood. Since we figured out obviously that it's very difficult to grow it, probably even more difficult to maintain it for 15-20 years, but we still think that it's a viable option because there's a huge worldwide shortage of sandalwood, and that is our long-term goal, agriculturally speaking, would be sandalwood. And so we have found difficulty with a lot of the short-term crop stuff, but that is originally what got us talking seriously about moving to Fiji, was the sandalwood industry. And so that is what we intend to do with the 200 acres that we currently lease. And so that was what was really inspiring us to make the big move from Canada to Fiji.
Yeah, and I remember being a part of all those conversations and just like figuring out like what our roles would be down here and talking to your parents and just to give you guys some history. John's parents, like John's dad's from Fiji. His mom's Canadian. Yep. John was born in Fiji.
Yeah.
His family moved back and forth from Canada a lot.
Classic colored kid born in another country, or like half color, just so proud.
So proud to be Fijian.
Just so proud to be Fijian in the good. Right situations.
That's good. That's why.
That's me, baby. Yeah, I'm Fijian.
Look
How
at
much
our
time
slogan.
You're Fijian? Yeah. Do you speak Fijian? I understand it. Oh, how much time do you spend there? Like, dude, like so much time. Like at least like 2 or 3 years. Like, come on, man.
Okay, a little longer than that. But anyway, John's parents spent. Well, okay, let's refer. John's dad grew up here, obviously. So let's just say John's mom has spent at least 8 years in Fiji.
Yeah, we were having a conversation with her.
8 years. It was 8 years.
It was
I
8
thought
years?
It was 10, and you thought it was 5, and Mom told us 8. So
Mom, shouts out to Mom for like really sticking it out.
Yeah.
I guess back in the day too.
Dude, she had it rough. She had it really rough.
Really rough.
Dad brought her in, and they lived in like a bure, which is like a grass hut, and had to cook over like smoking fire all the time, and like rats galore. And honestly, it was another level. And Judy Bhatti just loved the game. Pain.
Killing the
game.
Just
killed it. She just loved it. And
Stephanie, I want you to get out there. Okay, next time is it's growing season right now. For all those of you who don't know, it's growing season right now in Fiji, which means that in our area we grow sugarcane. And so, like my mom, I'd like you to go out there and grab a sack of fertilizer and go and fertilize my uncle's cane farms. Okay?
Yeah. So
you guys hear the crickets?
So what was kind of discovered is, we were discussing between us, his parents and us, and we said, like, obviously, Mom and Dad, you're a better fit to live in Fiji, be in the village. Like, out of between the 2 white women that have to go and live in the village, John's mom, ideal fit. Stephanie over here, not the ideal fit. I love my air conditioning. I love my Starbucks. I love the comforts,
Hmm.
but I love business.
Yeah. Okay. So Stephanie, yeah, you're not a prissy city girl,
No,
but you do like the comforts.
I love the
As do I.
comforts.
I like the comforts. I mean, obviously,
I love them.
this is. I think we're on December 15th here, and Jonathan put on about, we'll call it 20-25 pounds while I was in Canada. So I obviously love the comforts in Canada. Okay, like I love the comforts, maybe a little too much,
Yeah. Well, okay, and
but
all John,
but you love, what we're getting at is that you love business.
I love business.
Yeah,
So
and
so
that will
John's
override
parents
almost
are the
anything.
better fit to live here, but we thought our opinion was John's parents were not the better fit to start businesses within the country.
Mm.
Because for us, we said, well, like you guys could come down and make an epic farm, but you would farm every day. You would
Yeah,
never turn it into something where other people are farming, or outside of farming, other businesses. Like that's something, if we wanted to employ people here, we need to be able to make businesses. And so we said, you know what, you guys have great jobs, keep them.
yeah,
If we struggle financially, you help us, and we will try to crush out businesses. So in the next 5 years, when you want to retire, we've got you.
yeah, and that's like a really interesting point. I won't call it like a point of contention, but I'll call it something like maybe sensitive, because um
What?
no, it's just we're in business obviously, and I've talked about this I think on YouTube and stuff before, is that like we're in business with my parents.
Yeah.
And my parents are the other half. And the Waka family is a way for us to tell our story to the world about like what we've done, because we think it's like it's it's interesting to us, obviously, because we're the ones taking the step. It would be cool to like be 70, 80, 90 years old and looking back on like 5,000 vlogs on YouTube, the way people look back in their albums. But also like, my parents, they, it's important for us to have the relationship with them that we have. But going into the future a long ways, I think there are a lot of things that we haven't made evident to everybody about like how important it is and how much that they do for us, and how important it is to have a partnership like that,
Hmm.
and where people play good roles and they work together and they accept like what their roles are for the time. Like, because we had a conversation with them initially that was like, okay, which one of the couples is going to go to Fiji? Like, is it going to be mom and dad, or is it going to be me and you?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think John and I pushed for it being us
Mm-hmm.
because we thought we can make it a business where you guys, mom and dad, would farm and be the farmers, and we just didn't see how.
Boy, could we use a few of those right now.
Yeah. But like we just want them to be able to retire
Yeah.
comfortably. And so for us long term, we just thought like, yeah, like it's got to be us. And I'm
I just,
I personally am not the best fit for Fiji, and I think we always all knew that within the group of four of us. And even dad, I remember him saying to me, like your dad
yeah.
saying to me like, I don't know. I don't know if you can handle it there. Like even mom cried and like had a hard time, and
No,
she's
we've
like,
had a few rough days.
"Oh, dude,
A
yeah."
few hundred, maybe.
But I will say, like, I remember saying to your dad, like, no, I think I'm pretty prepared. Like, I think I know what I'm getting into. And to be
Well, you're
honest,
goal orientated.
yeah, and to
Yeah.
be honest, like, I do feel like I knew what I was getting into. Like, just like within our marriage, like, when I went into marrying John, I am not like a rose colored glasses person. Like, this sounds harsh, but for me, I was like, I want to know all the things that I might dislike about John. I want to know about the
That's
things
rough.
that are irritating, because then I know, can I put up with them for a lifetime? Because I know what I like about it. What don't I like about you? And I kind
Right.
of felt like the same about moving to Fiji. What don't I like about the village? What don't I like about Fiji? What is hard for me? I want to know those things. And then that way I can go into this relationship of like living within this country and culture, and the dynamic we put ourselves into, knowing what the things that will be hard. Not to say that there's been a few surprises along the way, but they haven't been big ones. They
COVID?
haven't, huh?
No, I'm talking about surprises.
Well, there's
Yeah.
been lots of small surprises, and like lots of like cultural nuances,
Right,
obviously
right. I see
that
what
I
you're
wasn't
saying.
aware of. But
I
like
see what
the
you're saying.
big ones, like the really like day to day ones that are like smack in your face, like I knew about, and I really haven't been like jolted from those. Like I
Right.
kind of was like, this is what my daily life will look like. I've been mostly surprised about like things like going into like a wedding and having like a preconceived idea of what would happen within like whatever, and then being told no, 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 in a Fijian wedding, like
Yeah.
this never happens, and I'm like,
Comparison
oh,
is comparison is hard, and I think initially I was in a bank once, and I think I made a comparison to Canada. And I think in the banks here in Fiji, you have to wait in these super long lineups, and you sit in chairs that are kind of in these rows. And as one person gets served, like everybody has to get up out of the chair and move to the side. And then the person at the front of the row obviously goes up to the teller, and then everybody has to get up. So you have to like get up like 20 times,
mm,
to get to the front. And then I made some sort of comment to the teller, and she said like, "Oh, please don't compare Fiji to overseas, okay?" And that was kind of like a wake up call. And you know what? She was totally justified to say that. And I was coming from, I think I just recently actually come to Fiji. And so the thing about traveling, the thing about moving across the world is you get perspective. And I think that perspective is what Stephanie's talking about. Is you have something to compare it to, because when you live in Fiji and all you know is what happens in Fiji or any other country in the South Pacific, Samoa, Vanuatu, or Tonga or anything like that, it's like that's normal. And so like what we're comparing things to is not, we're not saying it's better. We're just saying that it's different. And one thought that I had when I was in the bank with that girl was like, yeah, you know what? It's not right to compare everything to overseas or to Canada or the USA or wherever you live. But it's like the other side of that is like, I feel like sometimes comparison is like the mother of innovation, because when you know something that is better or more efficient, like that, you can strive for that. Like the same way we do with the coffee shop that we opened a few months ago. It's like we know the areas that coffee shops in Fiji could be better, and so we strive for that because we've experienced what we think is better,
yeah.
right?
Well, and then on like the flip side, like as we do the podcast, like I think for John and I, because we do come from two worlds, let's say, like, you know, Canada, and John's originally from Fiji. Now we all live here. Like we're back and forth. Those are the things that we will compare. But when we may complain sometimes about Fiji, I'm going to be honest, like, because we're in it.
Yeah.
When we were in Canada, my gosh, did we complain about what we were in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, we love Fiji, so please do not hear us saying, like,
Yeah, and
all the bad things in the world or,
yeah,
like, whatever. We're here because we want to be here and we love the people and we want good things for being here. And, like, the hard stuff, we're so willing to put up with, whatever's happening. I think John and I sometimes see, okay, in Canada, they have figured out a way to do it better. Modernization has already come into Fiji. So let's bring some of that convenience over here.
yeah.
But on the flip side, like, honestly, I see my family so much more in Fiji than I ever did in Canada. Like, it's crazy how much downtime we have, how
Like your
much, like,
family being me and the boys, like
yeah, you and the
Aliki and
boys.
Seba,
Like,
our two sons.
I see you guys so much more than I did in Canada, because in Canada, even though we were like bored, like we had so many things going on every single night,
Yeah,
especially
all the time.
like all the time.
We chose them. We
Yeah,
chose them.
but it was so busy.
Yeah.
Jonathan hates saying busy, but it was so busy, and like I appreciate being in Fiji so we can actually have family time and enjoy each other and like sit down at night and just like chit chat.
Yeah.
And it's been so great being here. And like there's inconveniences within customer service in Fiji, or like there's not as much like technical
Or
like
just the difficulty
advancement.
of living in a house in the village.
Yeah, but then also John and I have put ourselves in the village. Like we could we could be in Savu Savu, that small resort town, living this holiday lifestyle
Yep. We
and
could be in
just
Suva.
having passive income and just like pay for our groceries and like plant some papayas and eat what we grow. Like it wouldn't be that hard to do that.
Yeah,
So,
like by all means. Yeah. We could take the money that we make from our business in Canada, and with the farming knowledge that I've learned in the last 3 years, I could totally check out of any endeavors
yeah,
and
easy.
just take a load of whatever I have from the farm to the market, have no employees, and just be totally self sufficient.
Yeah.
Lots of people obsess and they romanticize the
Self
self
sustainability.
sustainable like farm
Small
life,
agriculture,
and it's
farming,
like
hobby
I could
farm.
do that no problem,
Yeah.
and live a completely empty life, and that's just not what we're in Fiji to do. Like the mission of our company is to create employment opportunities. And so that would imply that you want to do business.
Yeah, and like part of the business here is like we ran our slogan off the sense of like we saw what the village had to offer, the land, and just like the lack of fathers that were here.
Mm.
I think like supporting their families that had to go overseas, and we said like, yeah, let's come back to your heritage and back to your roots and back to like the things that like your family has here, and like let's build employment for people so families do not have to move overseas, and like let's do something for the community. Like there's opportunity like crazy. Like every time I blink I could think of a new business. Like the creativity is not hard. Like the you just have to have a little bit of an imagination and go, wow, there's so much opportunity
Yeah.
here.
And I think like that the opportunities are endless. And
Endless.
we are ideas people.
Yeah,
So it's
that's a
a great
problem.
combination, but it's also a problem.
It's a problem.
Because what we've identified, and I think what we've told so many people, is that like Fiji is a land of opportunity. Whereas like in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the US, so many things have been done and replicated and refined over and over and over again to the point where it's like what we've done with our coffee shop, Fresh Tea and Coffee. And by the way, this episode is brought to you by Fresh Tea and Coffee.
Oh my
If
gosh.
you're ever traveling through Vanuatu and you find yourself on the way from Lambasa to Savu Savu, or maybe on the way back from Savu Savu to Lambasa, and maybe even you go down to catch the boat in Nambualu, which is at the other end of our island, just know that there has never been a place halfway for you to stop for a quick tea or a coffee. And so we decided to open Fresh Tea and Coffee, which is right in Sanganga. And where do you go? Well, you're going to turn at the police station and go in the direction of the police station. And you're going to go about 300 meters down the road. And Fresh Tea and Coffee is going to be on the right side. And what are we going to give you there, Stephanie?
Can you tell he just did a commercial
I
for
did.
us?
I did just
He
shoot a
just been
commercial for us. But
anyway. You're gonna be offered there what we call sticky buns, or
yes.
is as in Western Canada or lots of other countries we call them cinnamon buns. We have lattes and espresso and
And the coolest part, I think, about
iced tea.
yes, we have iced tea, which is infused with whatever the citrus of is in season, basically.
That's
Citrus
right.
of the day. That can be kumquats, that can be bush lemons, that can be normal lemons. And so it's quite a tasty treat. And it's something new in our community. And so, yeah, we're just excited to be able to offer employment opportunities to the people around us, and hopefully we're good bosses, and we hope that this can be something that people driving by and through Sanganga want to be able to pick up and stop quickly while you're driving down the road. So this episode is brought to you by Fresh Tea and Coffee, now in Sanganga in Vanuatu, and coming to a city near you hopefully one day soon.
Hopefully.
And so we came, one of the reasons that we came here was obviously for the sandalwood, but also to come back to our roots. And so one thing that we discussed while we were looking up in the mountains and we saw like all this opportunity, and like we broke down the numbers for sandalwood, was like, what should we name this company? And so we were going through, what the name should be. And I had a lot of ideas, like things that were probably a bit hard to say for somebody from the other side of the world. And Stephanie said, that's too confusing. Like everything I said is like, how do you say that? Write it out. How do you say that? And then how did we get to Waka?
I think I was talking about like, okay, well, in Canada we have a company called Roots, and we had been talking about heritage and family lineage and like what it means to be coming back here, and just kind of like meaning. And I was saying we really need something that says like roots. Like what's words for roots? What are meanings that associate with that? And you guys were throwing out words with to me, and you guys said waka, and waka actually does mean roots. Typically it can be associated with yangona, which is kava roots.
Yeah,
But I said, well, it just means actually roots within like the language. And so that
that's right.
makes sense. Like waka, I can say that. It's simple. It's spelled Waka, and it's not that hard.
No, not at all.
And I was just like, that's it. It has to be that. And we did have a while, like a discussion of like, I don't know about this, but I was pretty sold on it. And we kind of all settled on like, okay, let's go for that. So we have a brand designer that we work with back home,
Yeah, that
Alicia Dick. She's amazing. She does a lot of like the brand development within Kelowna, British Columbia, for and she's really great. She's done our other business, Organic and Clean.
yep.
We can
Shout out to Alicia.
yeah, we couldn't be happier to be working with her. And I think Jonathan worked with her the year that we were kind of just like making sure everything, our ducks were in a row. John worked with her for a year to develop our Waka brand. So she really like dived into like culture, traditional artwork, just different advertising for the country. And she came up with geometric design for Waka because she saw it in Tapa, and a lot of her research that she did, and John and her walked through a ton of heritage stuff about
Yeah, we
culture
wanted to tie. I mean, long story short, we wanted to tie the Waka brand back to
your roots.
our roots, and that's also where our tagline. What our tagline is it's in our roots, and
Yeah.
so that's where that whole thing started with the Waka brand and our mission in wanting to employ people and bring people back to the roots and not have the only option for making a good living be going to the city or going overseas or having to get an education and going here and going there. It would be to create employment opportunities in the place that we live so that families can stay together. And so that's why we say it's in our roots.
Yeah, and John and I were talking about before we moved, like, how do we connect with people in Fiji? How do we get people on board with our business? How does our advertising go? How do we actually be like influential in our community? And we kind of said like, it's interesting how like we look, and John and I love YouTubers and people on Instagram and
Yep.
Facebook and all this kind of stuff. In Canada, and just mostly for camping or I don't know, boating or whatever it was. And we said like, well, there's really no one doing it in the Pacific. Like there's not a lot of people
Telling their story.
Online, especially not in Fiji. And so we're saying, well, like, all right, do you know what? Let's give it a go. Let's be those people that share our story within Fiji and see if that's how we can get our name out there, how we can kind of start like developing a brand, and let's just try it. So we did do like I don't know, like 4 or 5 episodes, maybe more even in Canada.
Yeah.
Just like test out our camera
More than
gear.
that. Yeah.
Kind of get the feel for being in front of a camera. I'm gonna be honest, horrifying. Hate filming myself. That's why you'll see John more in front of a camera, and just trying to like say what we're doing and be on the fly with people. And we knew like in Fiji we're not gonna have access to all the things, so we better get in Canada and test out our gear. We did make a bunch of faux pas and bought a bunch of things we didn't need.
Yeah,
And
but
we've simplified it for sure. But
this came back
was a
to
good
like
idea though.
us like, okay, we're sitting at the mountain. We're looking at the mountain. Sandalwood is a very, very profitable, potentially, resource. And so it's like, okay, let's do that. because if we do this, we can create jobs. And okay, if we're going to do that, long-term vision is to create a brand which is bigger than just the farm. And so to create that brand, I always thought the reason that I was attached to brands, companies, products, uh, players, like athletes, was because I knew their story. And so we decided to do YouTube and do social media because we just wanted to tell our story. And we felt like the first thing is to tell our story. And that meant creating some sort of content for people. And so that's why we created the Waka Family, because it was a way for us, because our last name is not Waka, just so people know.
But if you do say hello, Mrs. Waka or Mr. Waka, this has kind of been like our false identity, and we're more than happy to say hello from that because it's actually really easy to go like, oh, Mrs. Waka. Oh, okay. Well, I know that you follow us on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and it's awesome that like you think my name is Mrs. Waka.
And it's a lot easier than Batisari,
And
which is
I
also the
love
name
it.
reason we chose Waka, because it's very,
And
very
maybe we should just
easy
switch
to
our
remember.
last name to Waka because that's so much easier. And when I have to say,
You know what? I'll go into the registrar's office or the birth, deaths, and marriages office, and I'll inquire about that next.
that'd be great
Yeah.
because when I have to
That
say
should only take
Bati
us
sorry
about-
sorry, people are just like, sorry, can you spell that for me?
Yeah.
So if I had to say Waka, at least it'd be like pretty easy, breezy, lemon squeezy.
So that's the reason that we're doing the Waka Family, is we're just basically creating a way for us to tell our family story, and that will in part tell the story of our brand, which is Waka. And through that, we can create employment opportunities. In the beginning, we don't have money, so we got to start some companies like
Yeah.
this coffee shop, like the one that we're going to be starting in Suva in the new year. And eventually,
Okay, wait. John says like this coffee shop. So we've started a farm.
Yeah.
We've opened a small coffee shop within our small community, which is in a transient city. Not transient city, I mean like town that's between two cities, so people drive between the two of them.
Yep.
It's accessible for on the go people. And then we're opening another business within the next few months here. We'll tell you about that in a few podcasts. But Jen and I are just trying to figure out how to employ people to the best of our abilities, make great employment opportunities for people in our community. And we thought, hey, farm and a coffee shop within our community, that seems like a great start. And then we're going to expand from there.
yeah. And initially that means starting companies from the ground up. And then
Yeah.
hopefully one day we get to have our sights set on awesome companies that align with our values, and we can bring them on board with our brand.
Yeah.
And so, but this doesn't happen without telling your story. And we really feel like people and businesses in the South Pacific don't tell their story. So we're going to get a head start on them.
Yeah.
And that's
So
where we find ourselves today.
I think wrapping up our podcast today, just kind of like finalize our thoughts on like what we did. We'll get into more depth, I think, next time about like how our move went and everything. But John and I decided to move to Fiji. We've jumped in, with 2 feet into the deep. And we've brought our 2 small kids with us. When we moved, our youngest was 1.5. Our oldest was 3.5, and we said, like, this is the best age to move. Let's just go for it. Let's move here. We've been in it for about 3 years now, just under 3 years. March will be our 3rd year on the 15th. So we're getting there. We've developed a lot of things. We've learned a lot. We've had what we call a lot of dummy tax through the years.
We've paid a lot of dummy tax. That's for sure.
But we've definitely learned a lot. We're happy to be in Fiji.
And also, you guys we will screw up. And if we do enough podcasts, we're going to say things we absolutely regret. But
and
we're
especially me, I'm going to offend y'all. And I never say y'all. I'm not American. I offend everybody often, which I don't mean to. I love this country and I love these people.
And that is the consequence of putting yourselves out there. Like, some people will hear part of this podcast and will shut it off halfway because they get annoyed, and they won't hear this part of the podcast.
Yeah.
Which is us saying, like, look, we're going to screw up. We're human. and we're going to say things that we regret because we're human and because it's in the heat of the moment. I think we're both
Or you don't
relatively,
phrase things the
yeah,
way they should be phrased.
yeah.
That's
And
a big
so,
problem for me.
and so
But
we,
intentions are good.
yeah. So we apologize in advance for that, but it will happen. And we'll apologize in the moment if we're wrong. Um, but we just think that, this is something that we wanted to do. We thought it'd be fun. We have these conversations anyways. So it's like, hey, what's wrong with putting a couple mics in front of our faces and doing this anyways?
Yeah. So we've moved to Fiji. We'll give you a more in-depth look of how it was over COVID, how that went for us, kind of bringing our family into that, and just how we are doing now. That will come probably in the next few episodes.
Yeah.
So that's coming for you.
Yeah. So I think that brings us towards the end of the podcast, but there are a couple segments, fixed segments. I think most of this podcast will be just us having a conversation about where we're at, what's going on in our lives, and what's going on, around us.
Yeah, maybe
Because,
some business owners within Fiji we'll get
yeah,
to
we
interview.
definitely want to have guests on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, for sure it'll just be us two. And then as much as we can, we'll have other people in here and there.
Yeah.
But a couple of segments that I wanted to have was one being something that we learned in the Bible. Because for those of you who don't know, me and Steph are Christians. And now people ask us, like, are you religious? And yeah, I guess you could say I'm religious, but I also usually tell people, no, I'm not religious. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and he died on the cross for me, and I appreciate that, and I love that about him, and that through that, after I die, I get to go to heaven. And I'd hate to leave anything on the table because, hey, what's the harm in believing and trusting in Jesus and then getting to be in glory with him at the end?
Yeah, and I've been reading the boys this storybook, that Bible storybook with pictures and commentary from my mom. She sent it to us as a kid's Bible. And the one thing that's been over and over and over and over again in the beginning is just like talking about how there's one God and one God that we serve and like one God that we love and one God that we trust in, and how we need to take comfort in our one amazing, awesome God. And I've just been, I don't know, blessed by trying to teach our kids about that there's one God and that he's created everything,
Mhm.
and how like we are sustained by him, and like God is all powerful. And my kids always say to me like, "Mom, is God stronger than the Hulk?" I'm like, "Yes."
Classic. They're
Is
just obsessed with superheroes.
yeah, is
Uh,
God bigger than that
yeah.
mountain? Yes.
Can God, who wins? Spider-Man,
Or
Ninja Turtles,
Jesus.
or Jesus? And then we have to figure out some like fancy way to explain like why Jesus wins.
And then also trying to be like, but those are pretend and Jesus is real. So it's very maybe complicated for their small minds, but I prefer the questions between like who wins,
Yeah.
Jesus or Hulk, and I'm like, Jesus easily.
So yeah, we're not gonna get like all religious on you guys, but we do want to use this platform as a way to like talk about what's important to us, like in life, and like what's going on in our like relationship, what's going on with our kids and in our businesses, and the most important thing to us is our relationship with Jesus. And so, am I religious? No, that's my answer to everybody. But I do love Jesus, and I appreciate what he did for me. So Stephanie's been having some cool experiences with the kids, going through this like kind of kids like comic, kind of like illustration Bible, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
with really really cool stories and a way to work kids to the Bible. And yeah, what's been interesting to me, what I found in the Bible, I think I talked to you about this earlier this week, Stephanie, was in 2 Peter verse 1. So this is in the Bible. There are two sections in the Bible, for those of you who don't know. One is the New Testament and one is the Old Testament. And this is in the New Testament, 2 Peter verse 1. And in verse 2, it just says, "Grace and peace be yours in abundance through the knowledge of God and of Jesus Christ our Lord. His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness." And so what I was telling Steph is like, man, I have not felt, especially since coming back to Fiji, we have had a lot of poop hitting the fan to keep this keep this rated G. it's been rough since we got back to Fiji for a number of reasons, but I haven't felt a lot of peace. Grace and peace be yours in abundance through the knowledge of God and Jesus our Lord. And haven't had a lot of peace, but that also seems to coincide with the fact that I haven't been spending a lot of one-on-one time with God and doing my devotions and praying and just kind of like appreciating conversation with him. And so I was convicted that, you know what, I just need to spend more time reading the Bible and just praying and listening to him. And I have in the last few days. And I just want to be open with you guys too. Like, I am not the person that you guys always think I am. And I hope that this podcast really opens me up to that, because I also struggle with a lot of things that you guys struggle with. And one of those things at times and seasons in life is putting the time in the word. And so I've been working on that more in the last week. And yeah, I've just felt like more like water off a duck's back. And part of having peace is being abundant in the knowledge of God and Jesus our Lord. And that means knowing that he's got everything taken care of before you even know it's going to happen. And yeah, that just gives me peace. And so, yeah, we want to talk about those things maybe briefly. Maybe one of us will have nothing to say at the end of each podcast, but I want to bring that to you guys. And yeah, hope that lands well. And also, me and Steph just bought that game, and it's called... Well, we just bought this game. It's called That Game. Well, I feel like it's that game because we've been playing it a couple times, but it's called We're Not Really Strangers. And we're not really advocates for the game. We just bought a card game that was like something to like get us talking.
And it's not really a game, like in the sense of
You're
like
right.
a board game. It's more of like a topic piece or like a conversation starter.
There you go.
And there's different, like, you could have friendship ones, you could have relationship ones, you could even have a sex version.
Yeah.
We bought the relationship one, and we thought, you know what, we talk personally about business, but John and I are business partners.
Yeah.
We do business all day, and sometimes you don't want to be roommates that just talk about business and go to bed.
Yeah.
You want to be actually romantic or talk about things that matter or actually have a little bit more in depth to your conversation. So at night, sometimes instead of scrolling Instagram, we'll put the game. And just have a meaningful conversation and talk about what it's asking us to talk about.
So this game has 3 levels. We're just gonna go level 1 right now. So there's a bunch of cards in level 1. There's like 100 cards in each level. So level 1 is called Perception. Level 2 is called Connection. Now this is in...
John hates level 1, by the way.
Yeah, it's not deep enough for me. But level 2 is called Perception, right? And level 3 is called Reflection. And this is the couples edition of We're Not Really Strangers. So I just pulled out a random card. And Steph has no idea what I'm about to ask her.
No.
But I'm going to drop this bomb on you. You ready, Steph?
Always. I'm actually good at this game.
Okay. So,
Maybe.
question. And we're only going to do one question. What
Okay.
warning would you give yourself about me at the start of our relationship?
Ooh. Okay. What warning would I give myself?
Can I answer it first?
Yeah, you
While
go
you
ahead.
think about it?
You read this before. See the part.
Well,
of
I just read it like 2 seconds
Okay.
ago, but
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Okay.
So I think the warning is
Lasso,
that
lasso. That means liar, liar.
is that you're like a super firecracker, and I'm gonna have to be prepared to like put out some fires, because you're super passionate and super loyal, and that means that like what's important to you is you always know what's at the top of your priority list. And so at no expense will you not prioritize that thing. And sometimes that means that like you say things that aren't the most thought out. And so I would just have to be prepared. I think I would say to myself, like, be prepared to like put out some fires and have some tough conversations, because Steph will defend what's important.
Okay.
And what's important to you is important to me most of the time.
John's right, but let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, mine's less like, I don't know. Mine's just less intense, maybe.
Okay.
But the phrase that comes to mind is like, what's next to godliness is cleanliness. I don't know if that's how the phrase actually goes. But if
I also don't know where that is in the Bible, or even if that's in
it's
the
not in
Bible.
the Bible,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
saying.
Okay.
Good grief. It's like people say cleanliness is next to godliness. Like,
Fair
that's
enough.
that's the perfectionist saying that, which is you. And let's just refer to like John just like has a mental breakdown if his truck is messy or dirty or muddy, which is like every day.
These
And
are all thanks to my father.
yeah, and then also like especially when we first got married, oh my gosh, like if the house was like not clean but like cluttered, John and I would have probably 85, 90, I like to say 90% of our arguments were caused by clutter. And once we had someone helping us clean our house or like tidy up, a lot of those arguments were solved. And the best thing is in Fiji, that's continued. When John ever has to wash his vehicle, that
It's
is
always the best.
a guarantee that we're gonna have a fight because he has the worst timing of all time. Like
So what would you?
I gotta go to town, and John's like, the moment I'm like, hey, I gotta go, John's like, yeah, and I gotta wash the truck before you go. It just causes like this immediate
Can I defend
fight.
myself?
You're welcome to, but if I had, what was the question again? What was the phrasing?
It was, what would you warn yourself? What warning would you give yourself about me at the start of our relationship?
I would
To be
warn
prepared.
myself and say, hire a cleaner and a car wash person, and your marriage will go so much smoother, and know that in advance, or wash your car daily yourself to save yourself the headache.
Fair enough. I would agree with that. Actually, just got the vehicle washed today in Lambasa, and that was easy.
Yeah,
It
he's
was
a
worth
better
the $20,
man. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Totally.
he's a better man for it. You can tell. Stresses left his body.
I did feel like less of a human with a dirty vehicle. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So that is that's that.
What's that?
I'm glad you know what you would want to be prepared for.
Yeah, just
So-
your like level of like intense cleanliness.
Do you want to do a level 3 question?
No,
No, yeah.
no. We'll save that for another day. I think we've chatted long enough. I think it's late at night. I think it's pretty much
It's almost midnight.
It's past 11 at night.
So
we're gonna sign off.
We're gonna sign off. And hey, if you guys have any comments or even like things that you guys questions that you'd want us to answer, let us know. This is the first episode 1 of the Waka Family podcast. And so, yeah, we're willing to change things up. But in the meantime, this is us, me, Jonathan, and Stephanie.
Yeah.
Aliki and Seva are currently sleeping in bed.
Those are our children. We haven't introduced them. Currently, Aliki is 6 and Seven is 4. And we moved to Fiji when Seven was 1.5 and Aliki was 3.5. So they've spent half their lives pretty much in Fiji and half their lives in Canada. So.
Yeah. And we want this podcast to be kind of a voice of the Pacific and whatever is going on, cool people to talk to, influential people. We want to talk to them all and give them a platform to say what they want to say.
Yeah, and just a little bit of us and our family and how we're doing and what we are doing currently.
Yep.
Some of our thoughts on Fiji and all the things. So you guys leave comments, questions. We're happy to answer. What do you want to know about us?
Yeah.
So
please subscribe to the podcast. It was brought to you by Fresh Tea and Coffee.
yeah,
We
also have a YouTube channel. It's up there, the Waka Family, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram.
The Waka Family on both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
thanks for listening.
this was the Waka Family podcast.
Have a good night.
We're out.